And now, my colleague Monica will share more examples of AI use cases in education. Over to you, Monica.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Munira, first for the introduction just now. And yeah, I hope everyone has been having an interesting session and been engaged so far. So I'm going to be talking about use cases in AI in education. And I just wanted to put it out there. There are many use cases. There are tons. But before I go into more detail, I would like y'all to go to this Mentimeter poll. If you could scan the QR code right there or type in the voting code if you go to menti.com. Yeah. So go there and there you will find a question that I'm going to post. So are you able to see this? Are you, let me see. Yes, I see people responding. Thank you. Face recognition, auto marking, yeah, predicting student grades, giving real-time feedback, marking, cognitive tutor, personal tutor, yeah, I see a lot of that. Exam attendance, feedback, yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of marking, feedback, grades, predictions. Oh, Siri, okay, chatbots, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's great. I think you all are, thinking about it in the right track. That's really great to see. Yeah. Um, and then the next question, I have one more. So, what are some edtech companies that you know of that use AI nowadays? So I see up there already. There's Khan Academy. Yeah, it's been growing a lot over the past decade, and now they have personalized quizzes that I think use some decision tree algorithms to kind of personalize how the student is doing, and therefore it'll produce some of the answers. Well, some of the questions, yeah, to meet where the student is. I'm seeing Newton. So Newton produced um, I think they produced the product called Alta, and it's an adaptive learning platform. Squirrel AI is from China. Yeah, Google, IBM, yeah, Facebook. There's so many, right? Some of you are also writing a couple of companies that I'm not familiar with, so I'm totally going to check it out after this presentation. Desire to Learn, Coursera, Quizalize. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for participating in this quick Mentimeter poll. I just wanted to see, kind of get a lay of the land out there. All right, let me go back to my presentation. So yeah, these are just some, terms that I threw out there. There are many use cases, as I mentioned already. So adaptive personalized learning is, trying to meet where the student is. Sentiment analysis is more on like it's also known as emotion AI. So it refers to using natural language processing, text analysis, computational linguistics techniques like these to identify and quantify affective states and subjective information. Learning analytics and education data mining. So these are fields that are currently growing rapidly. And yeah, I think some of our NIE professors are already working in these fields. So for example, it could be tracking student behavior in terms of like using sensors. It could be tracking student behavior also in like a virtual environment. So for example, in a education video game, and if you have like a long click stream, you can do some analysis using learning analytics methods. A number of you mentioned cognitive tutors just now in the Mentimeter poll, so that's great. Yeah, intelligent tutoring systems is a huge field out there. It's been around for a few decades now, actually, but only in the past, I think, decade or so, it's really been more commercialized. And yeah, chatbots, I also saw that in the Mentimeter poll just now. So yeah, chatbots are becoming more popular now. I think, with, for example, like, with the Facebook Messenger platform, one can very easily create a chatbot for um, so many different use cases already. And definitely educational chatbots is something that researchers have also been looking into more, to find out, how is it that, we're sending like personalized messages to recommend different learning content, for example. So yeah, but what I wanted to focus more on today is automated essay scoring. So automated essay scoring systems, they're based on research from the field of natural language processing. And this research really began way back in 1966 already, when this professor called Professor Ellis Baton Page, he created the Project Essay Grader system. So it's pretty much it's a computer system to score essays. And I think he was way ahead of the game, because back in 1966, students weren't even using the computers to write essays yet. And yeah, he's like widely acknowledged as like the father of automated essay scoring. The main goal on why this was even created was to reduce the teacher's workload in general, because I mean, I know a lot of the audience out there had been or are teachers or are going to be teachers, and a huge portion of your life as a teacher circles around grading and, well, teaching. So yeah, it's a system that uh, tries to alleviate teachers' administrative work in terms of grading. However, many subjects have different types of essays, and an essay for English might or would probably look different from an essay for history, and it will probably look different from a technical report for a physics class. So that's why tons of research has been going on to try to identify, what are the main, like, best features or the most indicative features to create a essay scoring system that is going to be used well and will help the teacher and not just waste the teacher's time also. So some main ideas behind how automated essay scoring works is that the machine would classify a large set of textual entities, and it'll try to classify that into very small discrete categories, or like little buckets of variables, and it'll try to correspond that text to the possible grades. For example, on a scale of like 1 to 6, but it doesn't necessarily have to be 1 to 6. It can be any quantitative grade. And various AES programs, they differ in what specific surface features they measure, and how many essays they have in the training set. So what Tern Poh had already mentioned, you need a training set for to train your machine to learn something. Yeah. So yeah, there were many attempts around, like using different machine learning techniques like linear regression, Bayesian inference. And yeah, so there are just a ton of different techniques out there. The main factors and like steps that go into this is that, from the beginning, the basic procedure is that, the system starts with a training set of essays that is carefully hand scored by human experts. So, maybe veteran teachers or researchers with subject expertise. And then the program would evaluate these surface features of the text of each essay. And surface features meaning like the total number of words or number of like subordinate clauses, or even like the ratio of uppercase to lowercase letters. So things that can be measured without human insight, basically. And it might seem a bit like well, why would the computer do that? When maybe, like, if you reflect on your own experience grading an essay, uh, you might not like count every uppercase to lowercase letter that your student writes, for example, right? But say if it's programmed into a computer system, like, how can things be generalized in a sense, so that these variables will add to like the algorithm that the computer uses to score an essay. Yeah, and so this program usually it's constructed around a mathematical model, and it'll learn over time. So the more essays that it grades, it'll learn to get better, and it'll learn to calculate scores of like these new essays that it has never read before. Yeah, so that is generally how it works. So I wanted to just go into a little more detail into like a model that is out there. So there are many models in research, but I found one from the University of Texas at Dallas. And Professor Vincent Ng is a computer science professor there who has done a lot of research in this space. And so Persing and Ng, they did like for the past decade since like 2010, they've been publishing different papers on how to model different aspects of student essays. So for example, there's one on modeling organization. And organization literally means like, having an intro, body, conclusion, things like that. But so much more is going on behind the scenes than just, these three aspects of essays. And then there's like modeling thesis clarity. So how clear is the topic sentence or like the overall main idea that that the student wants to get across in the essay, for example. And then there's modeling prompt adherence, which means how closely, like how much is the student answering the question in the essay. And then modeling argument strength. So not only identifying that the student has an argument in the essay, but also how compelling, how convincing that argument is. And I guess as humans, or like, as teachers who are humans, I think we might kind of take this for granted that we're like, oh, okay, we can definitely tell between like a strong argument versus a weak argument by just reading and understanding the student's text and meaning. But, how can a computer do this as well? And maybe equate to that of a human capability. Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of the research has been going on in the past few years. Just to give you a better like sense on like, say, I'm just taking one example from Persing and Ng on modeling organization. So it's a lengthy process. So they started with like a large corpus. They have 4.5 million words in more than 6,000 essays, and they randomly selected 1,003 essays to work with for annotation. So I mentioned earlier that you need expert teachers and researchers to hand annotate. And then they did all these different steps on like annotator training and selection, inter-annotator agreement. So inter-annotator agreement is very important because you don't want like one subjective human to be scoring like a bunch of essays, and then it makes your algorithm like weird if it's based on like this just one person. So I think in this research, they had at least 2 annotators that were scoring like 800 over essays. And then they compare the scores between all these different pairs of annotators to calculate the inter-annotator agreement. And so I think doing that multiple rounds, and then they identified essential elements of an argument. They labeled the paragraph functions. So, in an argumentative essay, for example, there's introduction, body, conclusion, and rebuttal. But, what is the like function of each paragraph? And then there might be more like sub-paragraphs and all that. So like, really labeling and making it clear to the computer that is reading it, like, this is what it is. And then on a like even a more microscopic scale is like down to the sentence, like, can you label the function of the sentences? And then finally, after that, they did scoring. So they did 2 different types of scoring. One is heuristic based, which they use the K nearest neighbors technique. And by K nearest neighbors, if you've never heard of it before, don't worry. So it basically means that they were trying to find like K essays, so a certain number of essays in the training set that are most similar to like this particular essay, the essay that they are looking at. via, for example, the benchmark would be paragraph sequence alignment. Like, are the paragraphs aligned in this way? And then if they are, then how, to what extent are you going to predict a certain score? By aggregating, by totaling all the essays from those k nearest neighbors. So think of it as like one data point, and like k is like however many nearest neighbors they have around that data point. And then the other scoring system was on learning-based organization scoring. So they used here regression and support vector machines. So again, don't worry if this is the first time you're hearing these terms, but support vector machine is basically a technique from supervised machine learning. And as Tern Poh already mentioned in his previous talk a bit about like supervised machine learning. So basically it's based on labeled training data, and then categorizing like new information, new text based on these labeled training data. So yeah, I'm happy to share that article actually later in the chat. I can drop the link there. So for you all out there who have more AI experience and you want to go into the depths of like, you know, the math that is used for each of these different models, it's all there in the paper. But for you, for those of you who are like pretty new to this, I would also encourage you to read the introduction part and then the discussion part, which more qualitatively talks about the findings. Yeah, so I'm sure you'll be able to understand and have an idea. Yeah. All right. So there are some concerns though from automated essay scoring. So this is a tweet that I kind of just happened to come across on Twitter. So this lady, Dana Simmons, she mentioned, so my kid started junior high last week. He couldn't stop talking about how much he loved his history teacher. And then this afternoon, we found him in tears, overcome by stress and self-doubt. His grade for the first short answer homework, 50 out of 100. It was graded by an Edgenuity Inc. algorithm. So I'm thinking Edgenuity is the company that was grading the history homework that the student did poorly on. And then she followed up in a later tweet thread. She said, algorithm update, he cracked it. 2 full sentences followed by a word salad of all possibly applicable keywords, like 100% on every assignment. So there's your ticket. He went from an F to an A+ without learning a thing. So basically he realized like these are the set of keywords that this algorithm is looking for. And then he just kind of just jumbled and wrote some words that whatever that algorithm was learning for. But, at the end of the day, he was still not showing that like critical analysis or critical thinking that, it might be required for that history assignment, for example. And I mean, there were like this kind of blew up on Twitter, and The Verge picked it up, and then there was an article written on like with like screenshots about how this history or like automated essay scoring system was on this platform, and yeah, so this came about as a whole discussion about like, to what extent should we rely entirely on automated essay grading? At the end of the day, do we want our students to be, critical thinkers, or do we want our students to be just, gaming the system? Yeah, so these are all issues that I think researchers, teachers, and industry designers are thinking about. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to put it out there. There are many more of such, conversations online if you search. Yeah. So finally, I just wanted to put out there some different companies that are, in this field of automated essay scoring. So for example, up here, there's the ETS. So ETS is the Education Testing Service. It's in the US. They generate all the GRE, TOEFL tests. So they have this engine called the ETS e-rater engine. And they use it in combination with human raters to score the writing sections of the TOEFL and GRE now. Yeah. And then here is to Write to Learn. So this is a product from Pearson. It's a web-based tool, and I think they cater to fourth to 12th grade students. So that's about primary 4 to J2 students in Singapore. And they have an essay assessment tool in it. It'll try to assess the content of a student's essay and also assess mechanical aspects of writing. Yeah. And then there's also My Access, which is a product from Vantage Learning. So they boast that they have 1,000 over 300 writing topics in math, science, English, social studies. They are targeting middle school, which is about secondary school in Singapore. Um, and yeah, I think they do pretty much similar things to Write to Learn. Yeah. And then there's this called Cambridge English Write and Improve. So it's an online learning system, and it's more research backed because it was developed by Professor Ted Briscoe in University of Cambridge. And they trained this tool by using natural language processing to give guidance on text that this machine has never read before. And I think they built on information from like 60 plus million words, and they gathered it over 2 decades. And they are really focusing on helping English language learners. So they actually got human generated data from humans who speak over 100 different languages as their first language, and they're English language learners. And yeah, I mean, it was written online that they when the learner submits a draft, you get your draft back or with feedback in like 15 seconds, 15 seconds. And that's like an amazing amount of speed. I'm not sure if any teacher can just give feedback on a whole essay in 15 seconds, but yeah, I guess, this is one tool that is out there and that they're constantly trying to improve on. And then finally, the last two, there's Lightside from Carnegie Mellon University. It's an open source tool that uses text mining. It's a tool for non-experts to use text mining technology for a number of different purposes, which could include essay assessment. And then finally, this is a commercial product, turnitin.com. And the company has this product called Revision Assistant, and it also does automatic scoring for writing assignments. So yeah, feel free to check out some of these tools if you're interested to learn more about them. Again, I'm happy to drop the links in the chat later, but I'm sure if you do just a quick Google search, you'll find it. Yeah. So yeah, this comes to the end of my presentation. I've written a number of references here. And yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions in the Q&A chat later. So thank you.